Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Live Weather Impact here on WCNC Plus. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. As you can probably imagine, well, I guess I normally work Fridays, and Brad and I were together last Friday, but Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich is taking a very well-deserved day off for the first time in almost 2 weeks. So you have myself and Tim Buckley tonight, but we have a lot of, honestly, mostly positive things to talk about. The way that I always think about winter weather here in the Carolinas is that people get really excited when we have a chance for just straight snow. This is a very rare snow-only setup that we're going to see, and really we haven't forecasted many snow-only setups. Really, I think back to my first winter here, and hopefully if you were watching on TV, it doesn't sound annoying that I keep referencing the 5 years I've been here, but the reason why I do is because we just haven't seen a lot of snow-only setups in the last 5 years. In January of 2022, we had those 3 back-to-back weekends, starting with MLK weekend, Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend, and then 2 more weekends in a row. The first, 2.2 inches, then we had 1.9, and then a trace the following weekend. With both of those snow events, there was sleet that mixed in. So it wasn't snow only, but we still got a decent amount. The 2 winters we know after that, talked about it a million times, first snowless winter since 1878 here in Charlotte. And then we got a little bit of action last year, but this year we could have essentially the biggest snow event in one day that we've seen in potentially longer than a decade. We're actually going to break down some of the numbers coming up. But first things first, let's look at your weather impact alert. Snow day tomorrow. That's where most of the snow is happening. We are encouraging folks to avoid travel if at all possible. On Sunday, we're going to be watching snowy roadways. So that will allow for a bit of a refreeze risk that we will be watching closely. I don't think we'll see as big of a refreeze issue on Sunday because of the fact that temperatures are going to barely get out of the freezing mark. But it is going to be very, very cold. With snow actively on the ground, we do often see much colder temperatures than expected because essentially what happens is the snow is already on the ground and it actually allows for more cold air to get put back into the atmosphere. And so this is kind of another reason why we oftentimes talk about why humans are better, than the app that comes on your phone. I know you've heard me on my TED Talk about this plenty of times, but human forecasters know things like that, right? They know that high clouds mean you might not be as sunny, or high clouds might mean that you can see more sunshine move through. But another thing they know is that snow actively on the ground releases more cold air into the atmosphere. So right now my forecast calls for barely a high temperature Sunday at 32 degrees, meaning the majority of the day stays below that. So we won't really see a lot of melting, but also not a lot of refreezing on Sunday. Sunday night into Monday, a bit of a different story. We're going to look at bitterly cold air and snowy roadways. Now, again, I do want to break down some of these snowfall kind of times. The last time we had XYZ. So last time we had 3 inches of snow was 2018. Last time we had 4 inches of snow, 2014. But the last time we had 5 inches of snow was 2004. So that's what I meant by a couple decades, if not a decade or longer. So right now our current forecast calls for 4 to 7. So we could be within any of those ranges, which means at a minimum, it's the most snow we've seen in 8 years, which again, I said this on social media, and I do hope it didn't rub anybody the wrong way, but I mean, it is what it is because I already said it. But I actually am pretty excited to forecast this snow potential because of the fact that I know so many people are going to be excited about, sledding with your kids or making snowmen or maybe even doing a snowball fight. I remember not very many, but 1 or 2 times growing up as a kid in Atlanta where we did have an actual snow event. My sister and I could do a snowball fight. We just don't get it that much. Really, we didn't get it that much ever, but it is becoming, lesser and lesser. And so I mentioned this during our newscast, but this is the first time I've ever seen the snow meter go above a 3 in literally 5 years of working with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. So I think that really says a lot about this event, not only how rare it is, but again, how exciting it is. With the snow on Saturday, the biggest things I want people to keep in mind is that hazardous travel is still likely, and that's why you, of course, see us shaded in the red with major winter storm impacts expected. That's because we'll have active snow and then gusty winds also, allowing for some blowing snow and lowered visibility. But if you can stay safe by not traveling and stay warm, because we'll actually have wind chills most of the afternoon around 10 degrees right here in Charlotte, not in the mountains, but right here in Charlotte. If you can stay safe from those 2 things, avoid travel, either stay at home and enjoy the snow or stay bundled up and maybe take those breaks, head inside, for a snack and then go back out, you should be fine. Again, we're not expecting a lot of power outages here because this isn't an ice risk. So again, if you can avoid travel on Saturday and try to stay at home and enjoy any of the snow at home and not venture out, you should be good. That's why while there is still a negative impact to the system, I'm still very encouraged by the fact that it is snow only. So let's talk about what's happening right now. We do have some snow already starting to pop up here in the mountains, and you might notice a little bit of action on our maps right here down in parts there of York County and Chester County. Most of that is likely drizzle falling from the clouds, or really frozen drizzle falling from the clouds, but it's evaporating before it reaches the ground because our air is still so very dry. We talk about this a lot during any really dry spell where we're tracking dry air near the ground and moisture up in the atmosphere. Virga is rain that evaporates before it reaches the ground, but snurga or snow virga is what happens when you have the same thing with snow. And so some of that is going to happen first before we get the main event really coming into us here in the Charlotte area, which is mainly tomorrow. Here's Futurecast as we go through this evening. Again, there's 11 o'clock. Here we are starting the party a little bit around 2 a.m. and this could be a few little snow showers, but I think the majority of the action starts after 4 a.m. And then notice as we get closer to the afternoon, you'll see a few pockets of what almost looks like a deep blue shading. Those are those pockets of energy that could allow for a snow burst, a burst of snow, which is where we see a lot of heavy snow falling from the clouds at a time. That essentially means a burst of energy, a burst of moisture. And the way that I was explaining this during the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock newscast was it's essentially a downpour versus light rain. Right? When we see storms during the summer, you have some that are light, some that are heavy, and sometimes it goes in and out of the two. That's essentially the same idea here. So multiple bursts of snow will be possible throughout Saturday afternoon. Early evening, things start to taper off, but you can tell very easily that things stay pretty snowy all throughout the day. So this is the updated winter storm impacts or winter weather impacts for Saturday. So snow again really picking up around 4 or 5. Big bursts will be possible late morning, early afternoon, and then again we're tapering off. The worst travel related to winds are going to be in the afternoon. Once those winds start to pick up, we'll see gusts around 30 or so miles an hour. So with the wind, we'll also see isolated power outages, but again, this is not going to be widespread. So that's the maximum issue I think we'll have Saturday evening and overnight into Sunday, or minimum impact that we'll see is those power outages. Hazardous travel essentially picks up the second that we start to see some of those bursts of snow. Again, that's late morning, early afternoon, and likely continuing all throughout the evening because we will be watching some icy spots on the roadways. We are going to have a lot more on the upcoming forecast, our latest snowfall totals, but we of course need to bring in Chief Meteorologist from WFMY, Tim Buckley. So we're going to take a quick 2-minute break and we'll be back with more snowfall totals, the last time we saw X, Y, and Z, and what could still happen that might switch up the snowfall forecast before we get to the end of tomorrow. That's coming up just after this break. Oh, we're back with Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFNY. Tim, I'm just going to say it. Mm-hmm. I love you so much, you and Brad, but we have seen too much of each other the last few weeks.
It's been a time. Yeah, it really has. This January, I think today's January 42nd or something.
It's actually going. The 30th, and, but yeah.
Is it the 30th? Okay.
No, but I think that goes to say, like, it feels so long, but it's actually almost February.
It really is. But to me, I've felt every one of these January days. This has really been, I think, the most wintry or winter-like of a stretch that I can remember in many years in the Carolinas. We've had some really cold spells before. I think 2018, it started below freezing for like 200 hours up here or something like that. But no winter storms. This time, we're dealing with 2 winter storms, and in between, we've been cold every step of the way. We still have people up here, tripping on ice, trapped in their homes, and these kind of things that are problems. So it's been very, very wintry, and it doesn't look to slow down.
Yeah, very much so. We're seeing a lot of... Here in Charlotte, what I'm noticing is it's a lot of like parking lots that are in the same spots that don't really get a lot of sun are still very, very icy. Even the part of our dog park at my apartment complex, like there's a spot that doesn't see any sun, like that still has ice, like the ice that sits under the bushes, whether that's in your front yard, your backyard. So there are still some spots of a lot of ice. In fact, it must be still really cold on the ground because Roger still won't go into the dog park because he must think that it's still too cold in there because it's like the fake grass. So I think that's important to keep in mind that while this is not going to be like last weekend where it was ice, sleet, and freezing rain and then more ice on top of that, there are still a lot of spots that are icy. So if you've already seen a spot that's still icy as of today, January 30th, it's still going to be that way by next week.
And it's going to have snow on top of it. So, it's we have so much to talk about. I don't know where you want to start, Brittany. I know, our markets have a little difference to them. I think you're probably, for a change, in more of a jackpot zone or more of a favorable spot for snow than we are.
Well, do you want to talk about why that is?
The whole state is under a winter storm warning.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about why that is first, just to kind of get that out of the way? All right. Sure. Let's party.
Well, I think the dry air is a little bit of a wild card, and I don't know that anybody really knows how that part of the forecast is going to play out, because as meteorologists we have nowadays literally almost dozens of models that we can take a look at, and there are a certain chunk of them that we call the short range, and they only come out over the last couple of days, whereas the other ones we can track like 10 to 12 days out in the future. And all along, it kind of trended toward this is going to be a whole Carolinas thing. But then these shorter range models have started to kind of zero in on a little area, mostly between Raleigh and Greensboro and the surrounding counties, that you might get a little less moisture. And so I know that you all have kind of have that outlined on your snowfall map to a degree. I certainly have it outlined on ours a little bit as well. But there should be a region that might, and you all still get snow, I would expect, but there will be a little narrower strip that might be in that 1, 2, and 3 inch range rather than a 3, 4, and 5 inch range. And so for me, I actually still have Greensboro right there around 3, 4, 5 inches. Same thing for Winston and High Point, but it's going to be a close call. So just know this going in. If you're in the triad, we're going to be sweating it out a little bit. We're going to get snow, but we're talking about if you're wanting really memorable stuff to play with it and have the kids outside and all that kind of thing, it's going to be a little stressful, I think, watching the radar filling in those gaps in the morning. So when do you start to see that snow start to really develop around the area? If it's 5 a.m., great shape. That's going to be good. If it waits until 9, 10, 11 a.m., that's when we start to sweat and get a little nervous, though. But, Brittany, I wanted to share this with you, too, and get your reaction. I just got this picture from a viewer. It's a video. I sound old. I called it a picture.
You don't sound old.
This is snow falling right now. No, I just am old. This is in Martinsville, Virginia, right now. So it's already snowing there. And we're starting to get some reports of snow flying. Martinsville's right along the border, and so some of our border counties from Martinsville to Rockingham County, Caswell County, Danville, Virginia, they're already seeing some snow showers. Now, I don't know that this changes all that much in the forecast, but it's a sign that things are coming and that this is getting ready to happen at least.
It's funny that I was actually going to say that, Tim, when you look at some of, the nuances that we really only know, like you said, once the radar starts happening, I thought it was at least positive, because I noticed the same thing in our North Carolina mountains, that things started to pick up maybe seemingly a little quicker. I wouldn't say hours quicker, but a little quicker maybe than expected. And so maybe that is a good sign that you guys will be able to overcome some of that dry air, or at least maybe near Greensboro, maybe not so much over toward the Raleigh-Durham area. It is a very interesting overall forecast with the dry air, and then you have those bursts of energy that it looks like we're going to see closer to Charlotte and area south that could allow for those snow bursts themselves. And so it's an interesting forecast that you could see closer to 3 to 6, up in Greensboro, but in Charlotte we could be on the higher end of that. Right now the WPC, which is the Weather Prediction Center for folks at home, has us essentially smack dab in the middle at 7.5 being our most likely. So we're still staying pretty conservative here at WCNC Charlotte, just to go off of that. We don't want to go too crazy too fast. We can always adjust as needed. And so I think 4 to 7 is pretty safe, but there are certainly still some models, still some places that are going a little bit higher. And so with the bursts of snow, you very likely could see similar to what you would have with a rain event, right, where you see downpours versus lighter rain, and maybe feast or famine in a few spots where they see the biggest downpours. It could be a similar setup when it comes to snow this time. Tim, you've been at WFNY for 12 years?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, just wanted to make
2014.
sure. Have you seen in your 12 years, has there been another time where you've seen a winter storm warning for every county in North and South Carolina that you remember?
So I was trying to remember, and I couldn't think of one, but I was also trying to remember, what did it look like last weekend? I guess not the whole state was a winter storm warning, but it was pretty close last weekend, I guess, because there were ice storm warnings and stuff like that too. But I think it's been a long time. I can't remember a time, Brittany. You might have to go back to. There was that snowstorm in 2010, that one right before Christmas or right at Christmas. That pretty much affected the whole state, but I don't have that data in front of me to say exactly which one it was that was similar to this. But just kind of the fact that it's not only North Carolina, it's all of South Carolina as well. So it's every county in both states, and now going all the way back to Atlanta. So this is going to be a pretty wide-ranging thing.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, because I was looking at models, of course, for here earlier, but as you know, and I think people at this point know who watch this show, I am from Atlanta, grew up there. My sister, my brother-in-law, my niece and nephew were there, my best friend and her husband, their 2 kids. And so I was watching this because they actually have a wedding, my best friend and her husband, tomorrow. And I was telling her this morning, we have started to see some of that moisture trending further west into Georgia. So right now, what the winter storm warning, Tim, showing you in pink, tells you is that essentially there's 80% confidence or higher that they'll see 3 inches of snow. So I don't want to discourage them from going to said wedding, but I have told her to make sure that they're keeping a very close eye on things, and preferably at least having a backup plan, in case they do decide that it's not necessarily safe to travel. Because I know at least us, NCDOT, South Carolina DOT too, they're both encouraging people to stay off the road Saturday, just like last weekend. The biggest difference is that last weekend it was an ice worry. This weekend it's the snow and the gusty winds causing blowing snow. So I don't think the icy roadways will last as long. But Tim, I don't know exactly about y'all's school systems, but we had most school systems this week were either out of school or remote almost the entire week. And that was on top of last Friday. A lot of them were already under a teacher workday. And so we know parents are probably a little bit exhausted, and probably the kids too, because I'm sure some of them are ready to go back.
Yeah, our school systems are still out. They either went remote every day this week or literally didn't go in, at all. Some of them canceled. But whatever the case may be, there's a stress. We have human factors. There's stress to the parents. There's stress to the school systems. There's stress on the DOT, who's still trying to clear off some of these roads. We have some of that ice that's just like bounded, however you say it. It's stuck to the road. and they literally can't get it off in some of these rural areas. And this is right now. They're still trying to clear these things, and we got more snow on the way. So you want to talk about how cold it's going to be? Because I really think, one of the factors with the snow that's unique here is it's going to be fluffy. Mm-hmm. It'll be a dry snow, and that plays into the temperature. But there's also a danger, and if you're going out playing in the snowfall, you're going to want to consider this. There's a cold air danger and concern going through the entire weekend.
Yeah, so right now our forecast here in Charlotte has all day tomorrow, temperatures not getting out above about 25 degrees. But on top of that, as Tim just mentioned, as the winds pick up in the afternoon, you guys have seen our hazard map. I'm going to pull this up really quickly just so you can see it. We've talked about this a few times, that the blowing snow risk isn't going to come in until the afternoon, right? So if that's not coming into the afternoon, the feels-like temperature will get a lot worse as we go throughout the latter half of the day. So here we are Saturday morning, 8 degrees for a wind chill in Charlotte. You can see Greensboro's on the map too. So you got 2 degrees for you guys, Tim, at that point. Then we go throughout the latter half of the afternoon and essentially looking at the same. 2 in Charlotte, 3 in Greensboro. Mountain communities lower than even they're used to, about 15 below zero. So this is just Saturday. So that's Saturday afternoon. You're trying to hang out with the kids, single digits. Then you get into Sunday and look at Boone and Jefferson for Sunday morning. 0 for a wind chill in Charlotte. I've not seen that at all in the 5 years I've lived here. Below 0 by 3 in Greensboro. Mount Airy at 14 below. And then you have the mountains at almost 25 below. That's Sunday morning. The best maybe you see in the afternoon is, again, wind chills in the 20s. And the mountains, it doesn't look like they get above freezing. And then you have more cold air on Monday. Now, Monday, the low is expected to be lower, but the wind chill won't be as bad. And we've had that situation before where one night was technically not as cold, but it had a worse wind chill. But I think this also goes into tying in with the kids too. I'm sure that some of the decision to go remote probably also played into the fact that not only were the roads icy, there was probably a concern about kids at the bus stop, maybe even without adequate outerwear, because that's a concern, right, for a lot of people. But then, I have a lot of parents and teachers, Tim, who actually came to who I saw at like my workout stuff, throughout the week, that they were saying that it wasn't just their concern about the cold, but also, a lot of kids, a lot of their meals, that they have happen at school. So like there's that push to want kids to be at school because in certain situations, that's a lot of the meals that they're getting during the week. And so they were like, how do you balance, getting them to and from? And I just told them, I said, we don't make those decisions, but we help provide, the data. And the data does say that if the roads are icy, it can hurt buses. If the winds are gusty, it can impact buses. And I mean, this cold, like you don't want kids sitting at the bus stop when the wind chill is 7 degrees, especially for hours.
Yeah, you really don't want to mess with that. And, going into this weekend, so I'm looking at the Charlotte area, you've got like a 4 to 7 inch forecast basically, right? So this is the biggest snowfall for Charlotte potentially in years.
Yeah,
and
since
so
2004.
This weekend, a lot of parents are you're going to take the kids outside and you're going to want to go playing and all this stuff. Please don't go sledding in sweatpants. Like, please don't have the kids in a hoodie. Like, these are not things to do. But this happens. So with this kind of air, you've really got to, protect the skin, number one, and then, layer as best you can. Play, have fun, all those things, but make sure to do your best because this is real cold. It's not going to be 28 degrees out there. It's quite different.
Yeah. And I remember, like as a kid in Atlanta, when we had our rare snow days or ice days, you go inside really quickly, warm up, maybe throw like the gloves and your hat, your mittens, like in the dryer really quick, wait for it to warm up and then go back out.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with taking some breaks. I mean, it's not bad to take a few breaks inside, maybe read a quick chapter of your book for your homework before you're able to go back outside. Nothing wrong with that.
You go in and you make the hot cocoa and you get the marshmallows and all that sort of thing. If you have to pick an activity, Brittany, are you picking snowball fight, make a snowman, or going sledding? If you can only pick one out there in Charlotte this weekend.
Who am I going with? That determines my answer. I'm not being funny. I'm being serious.
On the snowball fights.
I'm just saying I'm true. So, like, let's say that Chris Mulcahy invited me to come hang out. Okay, I was going to say, if Chris Mulcahy asked me to come go with, because they're going to take out his son, JT, it would be sledding across the board.
Yeah.
If I was going out with, like, you, maybe a snowball fight. Not because it's you, but because
right.
we, I think, could get out some of like our frustration, with some snowballs. Like maybe not at each other, but just in
forecast
general.
was wrong.
Boom.
Yeah, there you go.
But if I went out with
So
like my niece and
we've been
nephew, it would for
talking-
sure be sledding.
It's so fun, and we've been talking, about the station about what's it going to be like? What's the snow type going to be like? It's a dry snow, and so dry snow is really good for sledding. It's not super great for snowballs and snowmen and snow forts and those kind of things. A lot of it will just kind of fall apart. So if you're out and about tomorrow, the choice is probably going to be sledding. But by Sunday, once that sun comes out, I tend to start to think that will get some partial melting, and you'll actually be able to make snowballs a bit better. You'll be able to make snowmen and snow forts or whatever you want to do a little better once that sun's out, but not so much on Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday is going to be too cold, probably not sunny enough. I was also going to say, if you just have a little bit of, rub it together to make your snowballs.
Yeah, you could do that.
It's true. That'll make them packable but still powdery.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Brad and I
powdery,
talked about...
you're talking about the snow ratio here.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I did want to mention, Brad and I talked about this during the 4 o'clock. I did like a little weather toss to him about this, but just how rare this is, Tim, to see this kind of powdery snow. So wet snow, which is essentially like an 8-to-1 snow to liquid ratio, which is essentially how much snow you would get if you had 1 inch of water. Normally wet snow is really heavy, so you get that more compaction. 10-to-1 ratio is what people like typically say. Back in the day, they said 10-to-1 is everybody. We realized that, once we had better data, that was certainly not the case. But with Carolina powder, which is what Brad called it, which is why I called it that, you get more of like a 15-to-1 ratio. That normally means that things are super, super, super powdery, so they kind of stack on top of each other. So I also think people will be surprised, even if they've lived in the Carolinas for a while, as to how quickly this will stack up. Like because of the fact that maybe a lot of people are used to the 8-to-1 or the 10-to-1.
It'll stack up. It'll also blow around, and it'll be a little difficult to measure. But yeah, and it's also easier to shovel. So those are all things that go into it here, that you should be able to move it around a little bit. And if this week taught you anything, on Sunday, make sure to get clear whatever you want to get clear, because once we get back cold again after that partial melting, it's going to be a lot harder to get it up.
Yeah, our anchors also brought this up to Tim, which maybe for us, since, again, we talk about this for a living, maybe it seems like a duh. But they were talking about seeing people driving on Monday who still had, like, ice that they had scraped, but they had left it, in that bottom part where their windshield wipers are. And then it was blowing back and kind of hitting cars behind them. So kind of the same way where you get annoyed when like somebody does their windshield washer fluid right in front of you and you like can see it come back and hit your car. That obviously doesn't normally cause visibility issues. If you leave ice or snow on your car, think about how essentially that creates more hazards, because the people behind you, especially once you go faster on the interstate, are essentially getting that thrown back in their face. So they brought that up, which I thought was a good point. But what I actually forgot about myself when I left work on Sunday, Tim, was my roof. So I actually got back to my apartment complex, and right before I pulled in, like a sheet of ice went like behind, and I was thankful that nobody was behind me because I was in but I didn't even think about checking the roof, which I've literally never done. Because I've never had to. And so I thought that was an interesting reminder too.
We're out of practice on here. It's a little unsafe, so we'll make sure to clear off our cars very well when we go home from work tomorrow.
All right, anything else you want to talk about? I do think it's a little bit crazy because, we can go